Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here on this Wednesday. Lots of big things happening in that courtroom today in the Kaitlin Armstrong trial, day 9. And also the last day of testimony. Both the state and the defense rested today. The defense did put on a few witnesses. One of those witnesses, man, from what I hear, was the Hot Mess Express. We're going to get into it in a minute. Colin Strickland also back on the stand, called by the defense. Not up there long, but he was back. I'm sure that added a whole layer to that courtroom. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, share it to anybody you think might like my content. Music fact of the day, I love me some Weird Al. When he did a parody of Nirvana's song, Smells Like Teen Spirit, he named it Smells Like Nirvana. Lead singer Kurt Cobain considered the parody as a sign they had officially made it as a band. Amish Paradise is maybe my favorite by him. I love Weird Al. I need to watch the movie. I haven't seen it yet. Harry Potter. Daniel Radcliffe plays Weird Al. Gotta see it. Day 9. State rested. The defense called their first witness, and that was Erin Lagrone. She is a senior latent print examiner. She was given 22 latent print cards. When she got the prints, she noticed that a label on there had been switched. So she notified her supervisor, made a note of that in the report. Really seemed like a non-issue. Investigators only asked her to compare the prints to Kaitlin, not to Mo or Colin. The prints were taken from an interior window, the front door, the door lock, and also from an exterior window. When she compared the sample of Kaitlin's to the prints lifted from the scene, there were points of agreement, but ultimately not enough to make a final determination for identifying Kaitlin as the person who left those prints. So the exterior window, inconclusive. Bicycle, for her, inconclusive. The interior front door window, lock latch, and the exterior window inside the apartment, Kaitlin was excluded. The defense points out there was not a request to compare those prints to Cash or Colin. In fact, the witness had no clue who they even were. On cross, the state asks about her knowledge of people trying to alter their fingerprints, specifically with pineapples. Remember last week, Kaitlin Googled how to lose your fingerprints with pineapples. The witness says the only way you can alter your prints is really from just deep scarring. The acid in pineapples is not very strong, and you would have to hold a pineapple for a crazy amount of time to have any impact on your fingerprints, and she's actually never heard of anybody trying this. Sounds like something you hear on TikTok or something, right? Next witness, Officer Niles with the Austin PD. He was the one that actually arrested Kaitlin for that misdemeanor. He had another officer with him. He said on the drive to the station, Kaitlin was calm, didn't seem distressed at all. Took around 20 minutes to drive there, and they engaged in small talk while on the way. When the mix-up about her birth date happened and she was let go mistakenly, which was a day after Mo had been murdered, they informed Kaitlin she could leave, but they also let her know that a search warrant was being executed at hers and Colin's house. The defense points out the size of these two officers that took her into custody and said that Kaitlin was probably scared and confused about what was going on. The defense makes a comment that Kaitlin was dragged into the police station. That caused the state to object. The judge sustained that. I just don't think you're going to get anybody on that jury sympathetic to Kaitlin at this point, but you tried. On cross, the state asks if the officer knows what Kaitlin is charged with, and he says murder. He's asked about her demeanor today compared to the day that she was arrested. He said he really can't tell without interacting with her, but it looks like it was pretty much the same as it was the day after Mo's murder on May 12th when she was arrested. The next witness, Matthew Quartero, he is with DNA. He does forensics. He didn't see any problems with the testing done in this case. He reviewed the DNA that was taken off of Kaitlin's gun. He said the DNA was taken off of multiple spots on the gun with only one swab. And he also talks about the unknown male DNA found on the gun, but we know it didn't match Kaitlin, Colin, or Mo. The bike handle had that unknown DNA profile, but there wasn't enough to create a profile for that person. Here's the thing about Mo's bike. You look at all the people Mo comes in contact with in the cycling world, I would say it's probable that a lot of people probably handled Mo's bike in some fashion, whether they're helping her adjust some settings or do whatever. It wasn't a shocker to me that there was some unknown DNA on that bicycle. They talk about touch DNA, and then they show the jury a picture of Mo and Colin on that motorcycle. Mo is wearing a helmet, and actually that was a helmet that Kaitlin usually wore. The witness said that the helmet would have a lot of DNA in it. The defense asks, is it possible that Caitlin's DNA could be on the motorcycle and then it was transferred to the bicycle? And I'm guessing he means by Mo. The witness says yes. On cross, the state says it's possible her DNA is on the bike because she touched the bike. The witness says yes. The state says Kaitlin hadn't been on that motorcycle, by the way, in over a month. The next witness, Bill Tobin, a forensic material scientist. Look, y'all, I'm going to tell you right now, I have heard a few things about this testimony from people that were in there today. Number one, the jury totally gone, lost, maybe planning the next 20 years of their life in their head because this was riddled with technical difficulties. A friend of mine named Julie was in the courtroom today and she was tweeting about this. She said that it didn't become clear this was maybe a green screen and a fake background until his microphone started disappearing in the picture. He's published articles regarding the problems with ballistics and how this has been supported in the forensic community. He wasn't a certified bullet and lead investigator, but his examinations led to exculpatory evidence in the past. How was he admitted as an expert on this subject if he wasn't certified in that area? But okay. He says the Association of Firemarks and Toolmark Examiners is a trade organization, but not a scientific association. He's not a member of that and doesn't plan to be because it's not based in science. Here's the thing about ballistics and this kind of testimony. We can say all day long it's not scientific, but at the end of the day, the jury is the one that's going to decide whether or not this is credible. This is used in pretty much any case where you recover a weapon and then shell casings and projectiles from a crime scene. He says the peer review standards are horrible. He prefers at least 3 other professionals to review the findings and also to redact the name of the initial examiner. He talks about striations on fire bullets. Striations are actually these little tiny scratches. This is how firearms and tool marks examiners match fire bullets that are found at crime scenes to the test fires done in the laboratory with the weapon that's suspected of being used in a crime. Subclass characteristics are defects in the manufacturing process that weren't part of the original design and not intended to be there by the maker of the gun. This isn't a protocol that is scientific for the FATME, which is that association, and there's no protocol for the parameters of detection. He said the language used in the AFTE theory, that such as sufficient agreement, it's flawed. He says a worthless statement and its worthless claims. He says these aren't protocols, but really they're just guidelines. He also said the terminology used by the AFTE is vague and uninterpretable. I don't think he's going to find many friends in that association after this testimony. He also said that firearm identification is missing 6 cornerstones of the scientific method, and that makes it 100% subjective. He flat out says this is not science. He says there's a lot of times where examiners will mistake subclass characteristics and impressions, and times when examiners have mistakenly concluded agreement was found. Turns out sometimes the gun in question never fired the casings that were being compared. The defense presents studies that essentially dismiss examinations altogether. The witness shows an example on screen of spent casings, and they look to be in agreement, but according to him, they were not fired from the same gun. So on cross, they read an article that he helped write back in 1984. He essentially said the opposite in that article of what he said today. At one point, this witness was Googling an article as testimony's going on. The prosecutor says, you do realize we're in the middle of a murder trial, right? The state names off some big names in the field of the scientific community and then asks the witness, do you know these people? Apparently he doesn't. And then they say to him, you should be more careful when telling the jury the entire scientific community is behind you when you haven't heard of most people when testifying in a murder trial. Boom. Here comes Colin Strickland. They ask about the motorcycle helmets. He has 5, by the way. Kaitlin has worn 2 of those. He doesn't really remember the last time she did. They show him photos of gun cases, also photos of the guns, and there were 2 locks for the guns. One was red, one was black. He doesn't remember buying the locks, but he knows he did have one and he doesn't remember putting locks on any of the guns. He also doesn't remember Kaitlin with a lock. The defense moves on to an interview that he did on May 17th and thinks he talked to Detective Spittler about the vandalism at his home, which was just after Mo's murder. If you remember, Detective Spittler totally said on the stand he thinks Kaitlin did it. Colin doesn't remember if he showed Detective Spittler photos of that vandalism, so of course the defense pulls up the video and shows Colin showing Detective Spittler his phone. After the video, Colin remembers he did show him the photo. Colin really doesn't think Kaitlin was the one that did the vandalism. She was in the house with him most of that evening, maybe not in the same room at times, but he said the big paving rocks that were pushed over weighed 30 pounds each. And he said the motorcycle was pretty heavy, so it would take someone strong to push it over. He said he was awake most of that night, didn't hear anything. The defense confronts Colin about lying to Kaitlin about where he was the night Mo was murdered. He didn't put too much thought into his alibi that he had delivered some marijuana to a friend. He said he actually sent that text when he was at a crossroads of where the alley was near Cash's apartment and then another road. The defense points out it only took him a few seconds to write this lie. He admits to deleting text messages. When asked if he was completely honest with Mo, he said he did his best. When asked if he lied to Kaitlin, he just very quickly says, I've already told you I did. He said he lied to Kaitlin so that she could have a peace of mind and says he did not admit to meeting a colleague. The defense says you're comfortable with misinformation, and Colin says, am I? Again, the defense says you seem comfortable with it. Colin says that's not fair. So on cross, Kaitlin did have a helmet that was her own for the motorcycle. She only used Colin's every now and then. Kaitlin was driving that black Jeep when she arrived home. Of course she was. He said that she never lent her car that night to anybody that he knew of. After Colin gets off the stand, Kaitlin gets up and goes in front of the judge. Now, I've heard from a couple of people in there. Caitlin's been very stoic, kind of ice running through her veins as this trial has progressed. She hasn't shown any emotion, any regret, anything at all. She did not look at the graphic autopsy photos that were shown yesterday. I heard she was a little bit lost for words. I think the finality of this trial is starting to hit her, and she realizes it's kind of go time. Her attorney kind of had to coach her along and just saying she didn't want to testify. Never expected her to get up there. And the defense rested. Rebuttal witness was Timothy Califut. Y'all, when these things aren't streaming and I'm getting names in my text messages, I'm just going on a wing and a prayer. He's from Sam Houston State University. He's a forensic scientist. He talks about the DNA that was found on Mo's bike. There are two possibilities that the state put before him. Number one, Kaitlin's DNA was on the bike because she picked it up and disposed of it. Number two, it's there because of DNA transfer. He said it's not likely that Mo gets on a motorcycle, goes swimming, and then was still able to put transferred DNA on that bike, all from a helmet. He said it would take 4 steps to transfer DNA to accomplish this. And further, the witnesses only heard of 2 instances where transferred DNA went through 4 transfers and there still was enough left to complete a DNA profile. His professional opinion, obviously, Kaitlin's DNA is on the bike because Kaitlin touched the bike, and not this scenario of transferred DNA. On cross, the defense again has the witness tell the jury essentially that our DNA can be in places we've never been. So that was it. I'm very surprised we didn't hear from Christine, Kaitlin's sister, the whole trial. I still want to know about that passport. I guess we never will. Closings tomorrow, 9 a.m. Central. It's going to be good because we get to watch. I think they go back and take an initial vote, and you're probably going to find that everybody on that jury is on the same page. To go get plastic surgery, that is a consciousness of guilt. I'm still going to do a wrap-up episode tomorrow night. You know, maybe after tomorrow, if we get a verdict, and I do think we will, this will give Mo's family some time to take a deep breath with the judicial side of things being over. It'll never be over for them until they take their last breath because they've lost so much. But the families that I've gotten to know over the years of doing this always feel a big weight's been lifted off their shoulders once that verdict comes in, the person's found guilty. And then, you know, that's the rest of her life. She'll fade into the prison abyss, and we might hear a little update every now and then. I think she might try to pull some shenanigans. I bet they'll keep her in solitary a hot minute when she gets to prison. Clearly, she's an escape risk. Her face will fade from the headlines, but Mo's will not, and that's how it should be. All right, guys, have a good rest of your evening. We'll see you soon.